Imagine what happens when a weakling dies, only to wake up in a world where he is a powerful monster. The story unfolds with a young man named Lin Yuan being hyped by his classmates to hang onto a pole for 10 seconds. Some of Lin's classmates start to bet. Some bet that Lin will reach the 10 seconds mark, while some others bet against it. As some of them expected, Lin fails to reach 10 seconds. Instead, he gives up at 8 seconds, beating his previous record of 7 seconds. He happens to be a third-year student who is currently finding it hard to cope with physical challenges after falling sick at a young age. The sickness made Lin's body weak. Even after trying his best to work out and strengthen his body, Lin still failed. Lin is usually called weak-ass trash due to his weakness. Realizing that the physical exams are near and still not being able to get a single point in the subject, Lin retires to his home. On reaching his house, Lin asks his uncle Wang if there is any package for him. Wang replies saying that a package from the south part of Guangdong had arrived earlier bearing Lin Shen's name. Lin knew that the package was from his father, who works in the south part of Guangdong. Lin's dad started working there shortly after Lin's illness. The family nearly became bankrupt, so the move to the south part was the only option for his dad to cater for the family needs. Inside the package is an action figure Godzilla toy. While playing with the toy, Lin gets bullied by a schoolmate. The bully throws the toy onto the road. Lin rushes to pick the toy, but is unaware of a speeding vehicle. Lin gets hit by the vehicle and is rushed to the hospital. To his greatest surprise, Lin wakes up as a creature. Reborn as a monster, Lin finds it hard to believe that this could be possible. The place Lin finds himself looks like a simulation. He is asked to sign in to the monster evolution system. Lin successfully signs in and is given a briefing on what to do. Lin is given a guide by the name of Kun. Kun is a hologram who tells Lin what to do and also gives information about Lin's new underwater environment. Kun tells Lin that to evolve he will need evolution points, which will be gotten by devouring other underwater creatures. Lin and Kun move around the sea in search of a creature to devour and earn evolution points. Lin comes in contact with a deep-sea monkfish. At first he is frightened by the appearance of the fish, but gets over his fear and eats the monkfish. After devouring the fish, Lin gets a power-up which is illumination. He also gained 50 evolution points. Lin activates his illumination power. By doing so, he attracts other fish and creatures towards him. Lin then starts to feed on them. He gets full and notices that his evolution points have reached 1,000. Lin then asks Kun for scale, claws, and body upgrade. The upgrade made Lin stronger than before. Lin then continued feasting on the creatures. Unknown to him that his illumination will attract even creatures that are larger than him. The light attracts a squid monster who attacks Lin and tries to kill him, but fortunately for Lin, a sperm whale comes to his rescue. The whale attacks the squid in an attempt to devour it. At this point, Lin decides to face his fear of bullies and goes after the squid. Lin attacks the squid and starts to feed on it. Lin and the sperm whale combine to feast on the squid, thereby allowing Lin to acquire more evolution points. This time, the evolution points reach a total of 3,000 points. The sperm whale tries to attack Lin, but Lin stands his ground and sends the whale running out of fear. Lin once again uses the points to evolve and upgrade his claws, scales, and body build. The upgrade makes him grow to 10 meters in length and about 179 tons in weight. Lin also gets a new power. The power is a monster compass. The compass will help Lin know if a monster, either big or small, is close by. After about a week, Lin had upgraded his body build and claws. Now Lin is about 30 meters long and 500 tons. Due to his increased size, Lin could no longer stay in the shallow water area, mostly because no large fish was present in those areas. Lin is forced to go to an island offshore. Before entering the island, Lin is asked to sign into the place. By doing so, he gets a new power, burst breath, which involves him emitting energy from his body through his mouth. Lin uses the monster compass to ascertain human presence on the island. The compass doesn't locate any human figure in that place, it only locates monster presence on the island. Lin walks around the island and gets ambushed by pterosaurs. These flying creatures attack Lin, but he defends himself and takes down one of the creatures. Still fighting the pterosaurs, Lin tries to use his new burst breath power to end the flying pterosaurs, but to his greatest dismay, the power doesn't work. The pterosaurs continue the attack on Lin. In a desperate attempt, Lin seeks advice from Kun, who tells him that the only way to complete the burst breath is to concentrate. Lin tries doing this, but each time gets disturbed by the creatures to continue the attack. Lin immediately relates the situation to when he was still a timid human who was always being bullied by people. He sets the situation to a particular time a group of students gang up to beat him. Lin then uses the scenario to concentrate. Finally, Lin successfully does the burst breath. The power emitted was so powerful that it made a hole in a mountain. After using the burst breath, Lin feels very drained. In order to gain back his energy, Lin eats up the fried pterosaurs. Lin goes around the island in search of water to quench his thirst. He stumbles upon a lake. Lin senses a problem seeing that the lake lacked the presence of animals. Lin takes time to observe. Then he notices a mountain ox and some crocodiles. The crocodiles attack the mountain ox, devouring it till all that's left is bones. The crocodiles then turn their attention to Lin, but fortunately for him, an ancient ape comes to his rescue. The ancient ape seems to have come to the rescue of Lin, or so Lin thought. The ape kills all the crocodiles and sits down to feast on them. At this point, Lin realizes that the ape didn't come to save him. Instead, it came to save its dinner. The ape turned its attention to Lin, who at this point doesn't want to fight. Lin, knowing full well that the ape is stronger and more agile than himself, tries his best not to make it angry. But all this was in a futile attempt. The ape rushed towards Lin, attacking him with a punch. Lin comes to figure out that though the ape is stronger than him, its strikes appear to be basic. All the ape's strikes are numbile towards Lin. Lin then decides to fight back. Lin starts by biting the ape's hand after each punch dodged. He then proceeded to use his dragon tail to hit the ape. Lin then tries to use an uppercut to finish the job. Lin's arms are quite small, so the chances of landing the punch is actually impossible. Lin then decides to use the burst breath on the ape. In order not to miss, as missing could mean fatality, Lin first needs to find a way to contain the beast. He tries biting the ape. This makes the ape to hold Lin by the mouth. Finally, the opening Lin needed. Lin uses the burst breath on the ape. Although the burst breath doesn't kill the ape, it gives the ape a chest wound. A week after the ape and Lin's encounter, Lin is back at the island. Lin signs in again and receives a new power of radioactive heat ray. Lin exclaims that in the past week he had upgraded his body and got new power-ups. The power-ups included an upgraded monster compass, which allowed him to see the monster's attributes, thorn armor, and a body build of about 13,000 tons. Lin had also made a new companion in a prehistoric giant rat. The rat reminds him of how he used to be as a human, so timid and afraid. Lin assures the rat that he will take care of it and make sure no one ever bullies it again. Lin had left the larva period of his race and is now in the growing period. Lin starts to feel a little bored and wants to get a companion. He seeks help from the rat to help sniff out the ape's hideout. The rat leads the way to the ape's cave. Meanwhile, the crocodiles and other animals are happy to see that Lin was leaving their homeland. On getting to the ape's cave, Lin doesn't feel the presence of any creature. Lin enters the cave and finds that the ape has transformed into a human. Although evolution has taken place, the chest wound is still there. The ape had evolved to the human race and had taken the form of a lady. The lady raises an alarm for Lin to notice the current danger in the cave. Lin Yuan comes across a group of unruly monsters in the cave who challenge him. The creatures are rather green and sticky. They looked more like geckos to Lin. One tries a sneak attack on Lin, but gets caught in the act. Lin wastes no time in killing it. More try ambushing him, but due to his thorn armor, none of the attacks work. Lin uses his thorn armor power and his burst breath to take down all the geckos. Lin then assures the ape-turned human that with him around her, no monster will bully her. The lady doesn't reply to him. Instead, she looks for a weapon and breaks open a stone. She shows Lin the fruit she ate that turned her into a human. Lin is surprised and assumes that the fruit is the legendary devil fruit or even a transformation pill in one of the fantasy stories. After using his burst breath to take down the geckos, otherwise known as demon reptiles, Lin becomes famished. He starts to roast the dead reptiles in order to eat something and regain his strength. Lin also roasted some for the rat and the lady ape to feast upon. Lin gained more evolution points through the feast. Lin then asks if Kun will be able to turn the lady back into an ape. Kun replies that he had to see the fruit the ape ate first. Then he will analyze the composition of the fruit, thus making it possible for the ape to transform from monster to human and vice versa. Lin is excited to hear this, as he had been wishing to reunite with his family as soon as possible. The ape in lady form takes Lin to the tree which was hanging off a cliff. Lin is fortunate enough to see a pterosaur take the fruit and eat. The monster turned into a human and fell to its death. At this point, Lin realizes that he has to be careful while dealing with the fruit. While climbing the cliff, Lin encounters a deathlark. A deathlark is a big bird which is also the guardian of the tree. At first, the bird seems calm, but after taking 2 fruits from the tree, the bird attacks Lin. Lin quickly gives the fruits to Kun for analysis, and Kun reminds Lin that his evolution points weren't enough to analyze the fruit. The bird continues to attack Lin. Lin tries all he can to attack the bird, but he couldn't get a perfect hit. He tries to use burst breath and radiation heat, but all are futile. Lin proceeds to jump onto the bird and tries to immobilize it. The bird heads towards the mountain with full force. The bird maneuvers its way away from the mountain. It tries to shake off Lin, but Lin has a different idea. Lin notices a lake. He then uses his burst breath on the bird. The bird and Lin fall to the ground. As expected, Lin falls into the lake, while the bird, after hitting the tree, fell into a pile of bones. Lin tries to celebrate his victory, but is shocked when one of the transformation fruit enters his mouth. Lin unknowingly swallows the fruit. He then turns into a human, although he still has some monster features, like some spikes on his back and a tail. The tail looked more like a pigtail than a monster's own. Lin hurries over to the bird's corpse, or so he thought. The bird rose up with a green gem by its side. The bird swallows the gem, which aids and hastens the healing process. The ape-turned lady quickly hurries to find cover, while Lin looks for small creatures to devour to gain more evolution points. The bird eventually flies away while Lin and the ape look for a place to hide. They enter a river and try to swim away, but are stopped by a king crocodile. The king crocodile and his fellow crocodiles start to attack Lin. The lady ape uses this chance to find a way to escape. Lin, on the other hand, is handicapped and doesn't know where to run to. Lin tries in a desperate attempt to swim away from the crocodiles, but is stopped by one of the creatures. About to give up, Lin stops and notices the lady ape. She screams at him to grab onto the vine. Almost immediately, Lin jumps up and grabs the vine. It looked more like the lady ape just cosplayed Tarzan. Although they were on land and no longer in water, the crocodiles continued their pursuit. The lady ape and Lin start to run. Lin asks the lady why she was screaming. She immediately reminds Lin that he was now small and cute and no longer big or scary. Lin tries to beg Kun to analyze the fruit, but he disagrees, saying that Lin didn't have enough evolution points. Kun, however, gives Lin some clothes to wear. The lady started climbing a tree. She asked Lin to join, but he refuses, saying he is scared. Seeing that there is no other option, Lin decides to overcome his fear. While climbing up the tree, Lin stumbles and starts to fall. Fortunately for him, the lady ape, or sister ape as he calls her, coaxes to his rescue. Lin shows his gratitude but is interrupted once again by the crocodiles, who at this point are busy hitting the tree. Lin takes the opportunity to shout at the crocodiles. He then notices that sister ape is staring at him. Lin asks abruptly why she stared at him. Sister ape replied that he was now tiny and small. Both of them exchange words and even start fighting, but Lin stops, alerting sister ape on the impending danger. It appeared that a python was on the tree. The python starts to chase after them. Sister ape just swings from one tree to the other, while Lin found it hard to run on the tree. Lin stops running, then asks Kun to give him one of the fruits. His plan is to transform the python into a human. But Kun refuses. By doing so, Lin is caught and swallowed by the python. Inside the python's stomach, Lin is confused on what to do. Lin then tries to use burst breath, but with his human body and features, all he could do is burst bite. The burst bite will increase his bite force, thereby allowing Lin to eat the python from the inside. To his greatest amazement, Lin gained evolution points with each bite. Lin continues eating the python from the inside, gaining more and more evolution points. Finally, the evolution points had reached the expected mark. Lin finally had enough points to analyze and extract the fruit from his body. Lin tells Kun to start the process. Kun does exactly as he is told, but tells Lin that it will take 30 minutes to finish analyzing. Lin asks if there's a shortcut, and Kun replies that he will need 1,000 evolution points to boost the progress by 20%. Lin is then forced to keep on eating till finally he had enough evolution points and sped the process up. Finally, Kun did the analysis. It is now left to Lin to concentrate and extract the fruit from his body. After some time, Lin tries to relate the extract to something that had happened to him while he was on Earth. After a lot of time and concentration, Lin finally got back into his monster form. Sister Ape is happy to see him in his monster form once again, but the same can't be said about the crocodiles. Lin takes down all the crocodiles, Then he exclaims how dangerous it is to pick a fruit. The fruit which turned him into a human and almost caused his death. Lin then promises himself never to turn into a human again due to the risks and danger attached. He thought to himself that being a monster is quite better. Throughout the time, Lin was exclaiming. Sister Ape had been trying to say something. She asked how he grew bigger than before and how he got back to being a monster, but Lin doesn't tell her. After eating the python for the first time, Lin is rewarded with a life fruit. The fruit helps heal any injury and replenishes all energy lost in battle. Lin gives the fruit to Sister Ape. He gave her to help heal the injury he gave her when they first fought. Lin then promises that if he is to have enough evolution points, then he will help Sister Ape get back to her form. Sister Ape explains that after eating the fruit and being transformed into a human, the geckos attacked the bird and nearly killed it, but the bird flew away. The geckos then carried her to their cave and wanted to give her up to their king, the same way they did to her parents. Lin assures her that he will get to the root of everything and save the Abyss Island from any threat. Sister Ape takes Lin back to her cave, where the two begin to hunt together. Lin continues to remind Sister Ape that she's a girl and shouldn't be hitting her chest and shouting, but she refuses to stop. Though Lin didn't like it, this feature made Sister Ape a good bait for the monsters on the island. Sister Ape continued to thump her chest as usual. Just then, two giant Smilodon come out of nowhere to try and kill her. Lin comes to the rescue, kills the Smilodon, and roasted it for both Sister Ape and the rat. While eating, Sister Ape starts to scream out of pain. It appears that the life fruit had started to wear off. Sister Ape had spent too much time as a human and needed to turn back into a monster as quickly as possible. Lin takes it upon himself to get enough evolution points in the shortest time possible. So he enters an eating spree, devouring everything in his path just to save the ape. His monster compass shows that there's a huge monster close by. Lin is happy knowing full well that he had gotten something big to eat. Lin continues to lurk around the forest looking for what the monster compass spotted. Just then he sees a group of spiny jackals. The jackals seem to be attacking a giant sloth. Unlike the sloths in his own universe, this one appears to be hardworking. As the sloth kills or hits the jackals away, Lin just catches and eats each one. The sloth then turns its attention to Lin. It charges at Lin, but just gets eaten in the process. The sloth, however, gave Lin a lot of evolution points. Each bite is about 500 evolution points. Seeing that their dinner had been eaten by another predator, the jackals charge towards Lin. They start to attack him. Sister Ape, even in her condition, tries to help. Lin acknowledges her for trying to help. He then uses his thorn armor to fight off the jackals. Thinking everything is alright, Lin starts to feed on the jackals on the floor, only to notice that the howl was for their leader and reinforcements. When the reinforcements arrived, Lin didn't really care about them. Instead, Lin just sits on the floor and munches on the already dead jackals. He continues eating until he is interrupted by the leader of the jackals. Not alarmed, Lin just pushes the leader aside. The leader continues attacking but receives the same treatment and gets pushed aside again and again. This continues till eventually when Lin gets the needed evolution points, which he uses to start the analysis. He tries to boost the progress but doesn't have enough points. At this point, Lin turns his attention to the leader of the jackal. After a few attacks from Lin, the leader howls once more, calling for the wolverine to come out. The wolverine arrives, shocking Lin due to the fact that it had a sword, unlike the rest who fought without weapons. The wolverine walks towards Lin. As it grows closer to Lin, he realizes that the wolverine is nearly the same size as him. And to even add up, the wolverine had a sword on its back. Lin and the wolverine stare at each other. Suddenly, the wolverine changes its attention to Miss Ape, who is currently on Lin's body. The wolverine charges forward, aiming at Miss Ape. Seeing Lin try to guard the human, the wolverine diverts the attack to Lin. It does this over and over again. Lin, not being stupid at this point, knows that the wolverine is only using Miss Ape as a distraction. The wolverine knows that Lin won't let it attack Miss Ape, thus making Miss Ape Lin's weakness. Lin gets what the wolverine is doing, so he fires the wolverine some attacks of his own. This time, the wolverine dodges the attack. Lin tries using radioactive rays on the wildcat, but it dodges the attack once more. The wildcat suddenly jumps up and takes out the blade on its back, leaving Lin in amazement. The wildcat uses the blade to slash the arm of Lin. The cut is so deep blood starts to pour. Lin exclaims that the wolverine is cheating. Monsters aren't meant to be using weapons. Lin tries to flee, but remembering the reason for the fight in the first place, Lin turns back to face his fear. He drops Miss Ape on a tree and tells her to hide while waiting for him to arrive. The wolverine once again attacks Lin with the sword, this time getting Lin in the leg. Lin, out of desperation, uproots a tree and throws it in the direction of the wolverine. The wolverine is stunned, seeing that there's currently an opening to end this. Lin uses his burst breath on the wolverine. The burst breath used by Lin has no effect on the wolverine. Lin at this point is baffled. He starts to assume that all the leaders of each race are immune to his burst breath. He is also shocked that even with the intensity of his attack, the wolverine's sword didn't leave its hand. The sword is more sharp and powerful than his tail and claws combined, so Lin makes a plan to get the sword out of the wolverine's hand. Lin tries a surprise attack on the wolverine, but is shocked to find both the wolverine and the leader of the geckos team up against him. Lin terms this as unfair, considering the fact that the wolverine was already too much for him to handle. The fight quickly turns into a 2-against-1 battle. While the fight continued, the bird from the transforming tree had arrived. This time, it is in search of Miss Ape. The bird hovers around in the air and finally finds Miss Ape on a tree. Without wasting time, the bird launches an attack on Miss Ape. Lin's attention quickly shifts away from the handicapped match to Miss Ape. Seeing that Miss Ape is in danger, Lin hurries to try and save Miss Ape from the bird. Despite being hit severely countless times by the wolverine and his associate, Lin doesn't back down. He continues going to Miss Ape in a desperate attempt to save her. Suddenly, the wolverine thrusts its sword directly through Lin's chest. This apparently is Lin's plan to remove the sword from the wolverine hand. Lin launches his final attack on the disarmed wolverine and the jackal leader. He devours them and gains evolution points, which he uses to help Miss Ape turn back into a monster. Miss Ape makes a full recovery and transforms back into a monster, but something appears to be happening to Lin. In this chapter, the bird and a newly transformed Miss Ape have a heated fight. Miss Ape appears to be relentless while dealing with the bird. Lin tells Miss Ape to try and recruit the bird as an ally, but it seems that she has her own way of making friends. Miss Ape starts by beating the hell out of the bird. While doing all the damage, she asks if the bird will become an ally to them. Miss Ape tells the bird that she won't stop the beatdown till the bird agrees to team up with them. The bird finds an opening and tries to use it to run, but is caught by the ape, who throws a tree in the direction of the bird. The tree gets the bird, making it come back to the ground. The bird exclaims whether this is how to make friends. At this point, Lin is shocked to hear the bird speak. If not for the fact that Lin had already seen a wolverine wield a sword and an ape throw a tree, he would have been more amazed by the sight of the talking bird. However, this isn't the same for the wolverine, who had been staring at the ape ever since. The wolverine is lost in thought following the event of a little girl changing into a monster. Lin brings the wolverine back to reality with a punch. The wolverine then tries to recover his sword from Lin. Fortunately, Lin allows the wolverine to take his sword, but it appears to be a trap. Lin uses his burst breath on the bird, while Miss Ape changes her focus to the wolverine and attacks it. The table quickly turns around as the bird seems to be defeated. The ape and wolverine continue to battle neck and neck. The battle seems to be favoring the wolverine due to his speed. Though the ape is strong, compared to the wolverine, the ape is very slow. The wolverine dodges all the ape's attacks while aiming her limbs. The reason for aiming the ape's limbs is to help contain her. Lin, who had been watching all this while, noticed that the other jackals were retreating. The wolverine was only fighting to help divert both Lin and Miss Ape's mind from the jackals, thus helping them escape easily. At least, that's what Lin thought, till the wolverine turned its attention to him again. Miss Ape, however, interferes one more time, and Lin, at this point, knew that the wolverine only wanted to collect its sword and go. Lin quickly stops the fight and starts to talk with the wolverine. He makes the wolverine promise that if the sword is given back to him, then he will leave both Miss Ape and Lin alone. The wolverine agrees. Lin then wastes no time in giving the sword back to the wolverine. And as earlier promised, the wolverine leaves them alone. There appears to be a human on the island. She looks as if she could be a threat to Lin and the ape. After the fight with the wolverine and the bird, Lin appears to be very injured. Miss Ape helps to hunt down and brings some food for him to eat. Lin roasts the animals brought to him by Miss Ape with his fire-breathing powers. He asks Miss Ape to hold the animals while he does the roasting, but apparently she holds the wrong side and gets her hand burnt in the process. Lin apologizes and continues to cook. After successfully cooking, Lin and Miss Ape sit down to eat. Lin gains evolution points with each animal he eats. These points are then automatically used in healing his wounds. Lin, who had thought that by being a monster, he would be invincible and could do whatever he liked without fear, had been brought back into reality. The bird and the wolverine had taught Lin a vital lesson that nearly took his life. Lin could only think about how Miss Ape's parents rallied monsters from all tribes and races, but still couldn't win against the Gecko King. He finally came to a resolution that he won't cause any trouble or fight any threat till he reaches his peak as a monster. Lin asked about the bird. He thinks that since it had been silent ever since the burst breath attack, that maybe it could be dead. He asks Miss Ape the direction the burst breath took the bird to and hurried off to the place. On getting there, Lin sees no sign of the bird. While still contemplating on what could have happened to the bird, Kun explains to him. Kun says that the bird had shifted into a human. Lin finds it hard to believe until Kun gives him a reminder of what the bird had done before. Mostly when the bird took the core off a monster and used it to heal itself. At this point, Lin realizes that the bird is more of a threat than he thought. Kun asks Lin to get a specimen off the bird so he will be able to analyze the bird and its constituents. Lin refuses to do any of such. Rather, he decides to go back to his place and stay with Miss Ape till whenever he reaches his peak. A month later, Lin had checked in 30 days consecutively in his place and was given a reward from Kun. The reward consists of an A-class skill and 300,000 evolution points, together with access to the system store. Lin asks Kun to open the system shop for him. After doing so, Lin browses through the system shop and sees a lot of gadgets that he loves. Some include Thunderfruit, Tai China, and so many others. When Lin asks for the cost of each, he is surprised to see that each costs at least 100 million evolution points. Lin, having just 300,000, decides to leave the store but is drawn back by Kun, who shows Lin the cheapest stuff in the store. It happened to be 1,000 evolution points, and it is a type of barbecue seasoning which will help enhance food taste. Lin takes the seasoning and goes to test it out. He immediately makes a hunt, then cooks it before adding the seasoning to it. Lin loved the seasoning, but not as much as Miss Ape. While eating, some pterosaurs try to attack again. The pterosaurs spit on the food, making it inedible. This makes Miss Ape angry. She tries to attack the pterosaurs, but due to the fact that the pterosaurs are like prehistoric birds, she doesn't reach them. Lin intervenes by using burst breath to take them down. At this point, Lin knew that Miss Ape needed training in order to be the queen of the Abyss Island and rule with him. He then pitches the idea to Miss Ape, but she appears to have no interest in it. Miss Ape cared too much about her food and didn't really care about becoming a queen of any land. Lin had come up with a training session for Miss Ape. The session reminded him of his human days. The ape isn't really willing to do the training. Lin is forced to buttress her decision. Lin adds a reward, which includes the use of the barbecue seasoning on all Miss Ape's food. Lin at this point was just taking advantage of the ape being a simple-minded foodie who cared about nothing but eating. The training session included push-up, running, and sparring lessons. Lin starts to show how to do a pull-up, but it appears she already knew how to do so ever since. He then races her but loses. Finally, he starts to teach her to spar. Lin gets carried away and uses his burst breath on Miss Ape, but fortunately for him, she dodges it. Kun is forced to call off the training session, saying that the two will destroy the island even before the geckos do. Kun brings up the idea that the two monsters should turn themselves into humans before continuing the training. This is like a safety precaution for the island, to promote its longevity. Lin finds it hard to turn back to a human, while Miss Ape, on the other hand, wastes no time to shake-shift. Still in disbelief, Lin tries to transform but finds it hard. He starts to reason how Miss Ape will despise him if he isn't able to transform into a human. Kun gives him a tip on how to make a successful transformation. Kun prompts Lin to focus all the energy he has to his public region, then try to contain it in one spot. Still in the process of trial and error, Miss Ape comes to disturb Lin. Lin gets angry and nearly shoots a ball of fire at her. Lin, while trying to calm down, reverses the burst breath attack on which he wanted to use on Miss Ape. By doing so, he transforms into a human. This appeared to be a cheat code in transforming for Lin. In his new human body, Lin becomes proactive. He starts to train himself non-stop. Lin, together with Miss Ape, trains so hard because of the challenge ahead. Miss Ape, however, doesn't waste much time on vigorous stuff compared to Lin, who does a lot more. A week later, Lin had a total of 600,000 evolution points. He reserves 100,000, then uses the rest on body build. Instantly, he grows bigger. All this is to the amazement of Miss Ape, who out of curiosity asks Lin about his sudden change in size. Lin uses all the exercises and training they had done as an excuse. He wasn't ready to tell Miss Ape the full truth yet. Lin and Miss Ape stumble upon a gecko cave. They decide to go in and contain the geckos in that place. After getting into the cave, Lin and Miss Ape are ambushed by the geckos. Miss Ape exclaims that the geckos will be enough food for them for a week or so. They begin a feast on the geckos. One thing that baffled Lin the most is the fact that they kept on coming. Lin thought that the cave being small won't house a lot of the geckos. However, he was wrong. The cave was bigger than he ever imagined. Suddenly, a thunderous sound is heard from deep within the cave. The geckos start to retreat. Miss Ape follows them. Lin is forced to follow too. Miss Ape wasn't ready to lose her food. Going further and further, Lin has a bad feeling about the cave. Miss Ape, however, is keen on getting her meal. Finally, they reach deep within the cave and are met with the king of the geckos' right-hand man, also known as the king's hand. Although not the leader of the congregation, the right-hand man had power over all the geckos. They listened to every command he gave. To make matters worse, the king's hand could spit venom bombs, capable of melting through mountains with ease. Not only does the king's hand shoot spit bombs from his mouth, it can also shoot multiple bombs in succession to each other. The king's hand has Lin handicapped. It tries to finish Lin off, but is stopped by Miss Ape. Miss Ape joins the fight against the king's hand, leaving the smaller geckos to be free. Miss Ape seems to be fast and has an upper hand against the king's hand. He tries to shoot more bombs at Miss Ape, but she dodges each one effortlessly. To Lin's amazement, the bombs acted as boomerangs and came back to Miss Ape. The bombs catch Miss Ape unaware. Finally, she gets knocked off her feet. Lin at this point joins the fight, but is overpowered by the geckos, who continue with an organized attack on both Miss Ape and Lin. Lin, seeing that the geckos are more smart than he thought, realized that they made a mistake in the first place. The geckos send bombs towards Miss Ape. However, Lin takes the shot for her. The cave is full with geckos, and more of them come out of the shadows. At this point, Lin and Miss Ape are not only handicapped but also overpowered too. Even the ceiling of the cave is full of geckos. Lin uses his dragon roar to try and slow the geckos down, but the effect doesn't waste time before wearing off. Lin then uses his burst breath on the geckos, taking them out one after the other. The king's hand increases its production of the bombs. He then starts spraying the bomb every and anywhere possible. This makes it harder for Miss Ape and Lin to dodge the bombs. Lin gets cornered by geckos and is about to be shot by the king's hand with a spit bomb. Miss Ape throws a gecko towards Lin, and to his greatest surprise, the bomb hits the gecko and bounces back. Lin finally comes up with an idea to even the playing field. He tells Miss Ape to grab some geckos. Lin had in mind the game of ping pong, where the geckos are the racket and the bomb is the ball. The only issue Lin has with this plan is the fact that he wasn't good at ping pong. Fortunately for him, all the training he had been giving Miss Ape will finally be of good use. Miss Ape seems to be exceptionally good at the game. She acts as a shield to Lin. Miss Ape does a good job in shielding Lin and herself from the geckos' attack, but something unexpected happens. The geckos stop attacking, then change formation. Lin is baffled at the new formation. This formation will make it even more hard for Miss Ape to shield herself and Lin. The geckos continue the attack. Miss Ape at this point continues and surprisingly keeps up with the pace. Lin is astonished by this particular sight. He had single-handedly boosted Miss Ape's speed by a significant amount. Seeing that the geckos are relentless, Lin decides to join the battle rather than hiding behind Miss Ape. Lin uses his burst breath to attack the king's hand directly. Lin then tells Miss Ape to make a run for it towards the exit. They both start to flee but are followed by the king's hand. It appears that Lin's plan is just to lure the king's hand out of the cave onto normal playing grounds. Lin knew that the king's hand is only strong when with his gecko crew, so bringing him out of its comfort zone could help shift the advantage towards them. Now outside the empty field, the king's hand attack can be dodged freely. The king's hand is relentless and continues to fire despite being in an open plain. Suddenly the geckos begin to attack too. They all cluster together beside the king's hand. To Lin's greatest amazement, the king's hand started to heal itself from the damage incurred during Lin's burst breath attack. Lin starts to think that the gecko's fluid is some kind of healing fluid. After healing itself, the king's hand does something devastating. It starts to eat the geckos. Miss Ape says that maybe the king's hand had lost its mind. The funny thing is that the geckos gave themselves up freely to the king's hand. The geckos literally walked into its mouth. Lin senses something really bad is about to happen, so he plans with Miss Ape to stop the geckos from entering the king's hand. Lin instructs Miss Ape to jump under the king's hand mouth while he would stop the geckos from entering the king's hand mouth. Miss Ape jumps but is caught in the air by the king's hand. Lin, however, begins to roll himself towards it. Reason for rolling is to pick up the geckos from the floor and make an armor with the geckos. Lin attempts to use thorn armor but stops due to the amount of energy the skill consumes. Lin faces the king's hand as he uses his gecko, a Moor, to block its attacks, and he moves closer by straining and pushing himself forward. He tells himself that the king's hand venom bullets are more powerful and faster. Lin continues to strive as he moves closer to it, and he uses his armor to hit the king's hand as he tells it to go to hell. The king's hand hisses and moves back, and it dashes towards Lin to attack again, but one of its arms are held by Lin with his teeth. Lin pulls its hands so hard as he moves away from him, until the hand snaps from his body, and as Lin removes its hand, the king's hand begins to roll on the floor in pain and away from Lin. He holds the arm in his mouth, and he begins to feel a radioactive energy all over his body. The king's hand stands to its feet, and in the middle of his gecko followers, he opens his mouth and begins to eat the geckos again. But Lin stands and begins to wonder why it is not growing its forelimbs back, but instead it is eating the geckos. Lin then tells himself that he must defeat the king's hand soon as his thorn armor is draining up his power. The king's hand inhales air and Lin asks it if it wants to use the power it had used on him before, and Lin also asks the king's hand how he wants to use any power without its forelimbs. The king's hand begins to produce a huge green ball from its mouth, and Lin becomes surprised as he wonders what kind of huge ball it is, but he tells himself that he has to stop the king's hand. Immediately, Lin rushes to the huge ball and tries to stop it by pushing it, but he sees that the weight of the ball is huge, and he cannot stop it alone. He then calls on Miss Ape to help him, and Miss Ape tells him that she is coming to help him. Miss Ape pushes Lin with her head against his stomach, and he immediately tells her that she is killing him, but she pushes further, and soon they push the ball against the king's hand. Lin then tells the king's hand that he is going to return its favor, and immediately he attacks the king's hand with his fury breath, and he eventually defeats the king's hand. Lin asks Miss Ape why they ran into a tricky boss at a randomly picked cave, and it would be as a result of him being so unlucky, but Miss Ape commends him for a job well done. Lin pays attention to the grass and notices something on the floor. Lin and Miss Ape notice that the green grasses are coming back, and he immediately asks Kun why they are growing back. Then Kun tells him that he found a decaying power that is not from their world inside the dead bodies of the geckos. Kun explains further that once the energy gathers, it stifles all living beings and turns the surrounding areas gray. He tells them that he wants to have a study of the energy, but it is difficult for him because the energy in the dead geckos has been dilated, and it is very scarce, but the energy inside the gecko prince body is strong and pure. Kun also adds that the energy must need the blood of Xiang Liu as a carrier. Lin then tells Kun that it means they do not have to kill all the geckos, and in order to save the Abyss Island, they have to kill the Gecko King in 6 hands. Lin also tells them that they should find where they are and kill them all, so that they can improve their battle strength and enhance their environment at the same time. Miss Ape tells them that she is starving, and she has to refill her energy before they go. Miss Ape packs a bunch of geckos, and she tells Lin to make fire for her, but he tells her that he had used his fury breath twice and also kept his thorn armor on for long, so he has no energy left in him again. Miss Ape becomes sad, but Lin tells her that he would teach her how to make fire with wood just by twisting the twig. He teaches her, and she begins to twist the twig, and soon she makes fire. A few minutes later, Lin asks Miss Ape if the gecko kebabs are ready, but she tells him no. He asks her shortly after, but she still tells him that they are not ready. Suddenly Miss Ape gets furious and yells out asking why the gecko kebabs are still raw. Then Kun replies after being asked the same question by Lin. He tells them that it is due to the fact that the energy in their body does not belong to their world. That is why the fire also cannot cause any harm to them. Lin then tells him that it is the reason why the beast on their island cannot defeat them no matter how the beasts are. Kun informs Lin that he is the only exception. Then Lin begins to think and tells himself that Miss Ape's parents and other monsters could not be a match to the geckos, and that is why they all died. He also thinks about how Miss Ape would feel once she gets to know the fact. Lin decides to eat the geckos raw as he is very hungry, but as he tastes it, he immediately spits it out that the gecko's meat is poisonous. Lin immediately remembers that he has to eat to gain evolution points, and he begins to eat it again. After eating one gecko meat, Lin says it is okay for him, but suddenly he breathes out fire, and he burns the other gecko kebabs on the floor, and this makes Miss Ape excited, and she immediately learns that it is only Lin's fire that can burn the geckos. Miss Ape becomes sad, and Lin begins to wonder why she is sad. Meanwhile, they are being watched by some birds, and one of the birds says that they have killed Venom. Another bird comes to ask the bird if they should attack them because they are weak, but the bird tells them that they should let them go. Lin eats more gecko kebabs and gets more points as he gets very excited, and says Venom is the best enemy he has ever had. Lin and Miss Ape turn back to their human self when they suddenly see some birds in the sky. He tells Miss Ape to look at the bird to see the person on the bird as he is trying to hit another bird, and he asks her if there are bird riders on the island. They see the way the person on the bird jumps and stabs another bird in the eye. Then he uses his weapon to cut the bird's wings, and suddenly, they see that the person is coming for them. Miss Ape quickly changes back into an ape, and she begins to uproot trees and start throwing them at the man, but the man dodges it with his weapons and suddenly lands in front of them. The man tells them that he has finally gotten them, and immediately he sniffs them and says Miss Ape was the female ape he saw, and he tells Lin that he must be the Thunder Dragon. Lin asks him if they had met before and if he knew him, but in his mind, Lin begins to wonder what kind of creature he is as he looks like a werewolf and a dragon slayer. Lin also yells in his mind the kind of world he is, and also he questions Kun if he is in the cultivation world or Western fantasy. The creature tells him that he had met him before, and he asks if Lin remembers him while he puts his weapon in his mouth. Immediately, Miss Ape recognizes him and yells that he is the Wolverine who is a blade wielder. She asks if that is his human form, and she also asks if all animals in that world could change to a human form. The Wolverine tells Lin that he wants to have another fight with him as he lost the previous fight because of his wolf form that he was in, but he would make sure he defeats Lin in the fight. Lin asks the Wolverine what is wrong and why he wants to fight with him so badly. He also tells him that he should stop saying he was in his wolf form, as if he took advantage of his situation. Lin informs the Wolverine that the light fruit he took is bad as his transformation is not complete yet because he has a wolf's head on a human body. As Lin is still talking, the Wolverine makes a fast move and he tries to attack Lin, but he quickly dodges it, and immediately Lin tells him that he does not know that he is serious about it and he has not even accepted his duel yet. The Wolverine tells Lin that he has to fight back or else he would die, but Lin tries to dodge all his attacks, and he tells himself that his human body is not as strong as the Thunder Dragon, as any small cut on his human body can kill him. Miss Ape sees that the Wolverine is already attacking Lin, and she immediately runs to help him, and as she moves closer to the Wolverine, she uses her four hands to try to hit him. While Miss Ape tries to knock the Wolverine out with her fists, he dodges all her attacks, and the Wolverine begins to think that Miss Ape is not a human, and she does not acquire any human fighting skills as she relies on her powers, and he overlooks the importance of consistency, and also it is useless to fight with her. The Wolverine immediately dashes towards Lin, who quickly runs away after sighting him. Lin yells at Miss Ape that she should aim for her enemy and not try to hit him with her attacks, but the Wolverine calls Miss Ape and tells her that the fight is not like their first fight, and he is only interested in fighting with Lin and not with her. Lin notices that the Wolverine is trying to provoke Miss Ape, but she gets more furious and begins to run towards the Wolverine, but she gets hit by his attack, and she falls to the ground and becomes unconscious. Lin yells from where he is standing that Miss Ape has fallen for the Wolverine's trick, and he had told her to watch out for him in the fight, but she is bad-tempered, so she did not listen to him. The Wolverine catches up to Lin, and he puts his sword around his neck and tells Lin that he must be a human being, but Lin tells him that he prefers to fight in his animal form. Lin also wonders why the Wolverine is referring to his human form, and he has also given up his human form for a very long time, and his human form has gotten weak over the time. The Wolverine asks him if he can switch between the two modes, and if he can it would be really impressive, and he also asks why Lin has refused to fight with him in his human form. Unknown to the Wolverine, Lin has transformed to his monster body, and Lin asks the Wolverine why he would want to fight him in his human form when he can fight with him with his gigantic monster body. But Lin tells himself that he dare not fight with the Wolverine with his human body, as the Wolverine would easily slice him open with his sharp sword that he used to stab the bird earlier. The wolverine tells Lin that he does not know how he transformed, but the monster body does not suit him very well. But Lin tells him that his weak human body would be of no use in the Abyss Island, as there are behemoths everywhere. The wolverine tells Lin that the human fighting skills developed by humans works best when in human form, and immediately the wolverine dashes towards Lin and yells at him that he is going to attack his throat. The wolverine jumps on Lin's huge body and slashes his side, but the wolverine tells Lin again that he is going to target his mouth next, and immediately Lin uses his hand to push the wolverine away. The wolverine tells Lin that he gets tensed even when he has not moved so close to his mouth, and that is how humans behave when they get tensed. The wolverine also tells Lin how the human hands work, and immediately he jumps on Lin's body again, and this time he aims his sword at Lin's eye, and immediately he points the sword. He stops and tells Lin that he is right, that Lin is human. Lin begins to wonder if the wolver has a good relationship with mankind and how the wolverine is familiar with the human techniques. The wolverine sits, and suddenly they notice a big bird, and the bird lands and carries the wolverine away, and Lin yells at the bird not to hunt on his turf, and he immediately uses his fury breath. The huge bird that carried the wolverine sees Lin's fury breath, and she says it was the thing she had seen earlier. She grabs another bird out of the one that the wolverine killed earlier, but she sees Lin's fury breath attack and notices that it does not have any effect on her. Suddenly, she feels a huge pain on her body, and as she looks back, she sees that she has been hit by the fury breath, which causes her a lot of pain. The big bird becomes weak as a result of Lin's fury breath, as she releases the wolverine and falls to the ground. This time around, Miss Ape is already awake from her unconsciousness, and she has been watching for a while to see the way Lin defeated the bird with his fury breath. Lin tells Miss Ape that it is the third time he has defeated the dragon bird, and Miss Ape tells him that he is so cool. Lin begins to think of how the wolverine had the opportunity to hit him as he was fighting with the dragon, but he thinks the wolverine just wants to practice with him. He also tells himself that the wolverine is very familiar with human beings, and if they can win him over, he would be of great help to them in fighting the carrion geckos. Lin sees that the wolverine is falling, and some of the birds from which he had killed one earlier are still bent on capturing him. He tells Miss Ape that it is the perfect time, as he tells her to give the wolverine a hand. Then Miss Ape tells Lin that he should not worry about it and he should leave it to her. Immediately, Miss Ape jumps up to the sky to help the wolverine defeat the birds that are planning to capture him, while Lin says he should go and visit the dragon bird that he had attacked with his fury breath in order to complete his task of defeating the dragon bird. As Lin gets to where the bird has fallen, he is taken aback as he does not see the bird there, and he begins to wonder if the bird had escaped, leaving her subordinates alone with them. Suddenly, Lin begins to hear the leaves rattle in the bush in front of him, and he concludes that someone is there. He goes to check, and as he gets in front of a big tree, he sees a girl tangled up in the tree vines, and he notices that the girl is injured badly. Lin immediately remembers when Kun had told him, Miss Ape, that he senses human energy. Lin suddenly realizes that the girl was the Doom bird he had just defeated and also been looking for, and he also tells her that she has a human shape and she is also a girl. Lin then tells the girl that she is much prettier as a human than she is as a bird, but the girl tells him to shut up as he has ruined her plans so many times. She explains to Lin how Miss Ape stole her shape-shifting fruit the first time they met and transforms into a human, then escapes, but Lin rescued her. Then Lin also stole her shape-shifting fruit as well and also hurts her when she tried to stop him, and she also adds how Lin interfered when she wanted to eat Miss Ape as punishment for eating her shape-shifting fruit. She then tells him that she forgives him after killing Venom, who was also her enemy that she has not been able to defeat in a very long time. The girl also recounts how the wolverine also stole her shape-shifting fruit, and as she went hunting for him, Lin stopped her again, and she warned him not to be too clever to stand in her way. She strains to free herself from the vines of the tree, but she could not, and Lin tells her that he wanted to make her into kebabs for his dinner. That was why he came to look for her, not knowing that she is human, and not only a girl too, but a short-tempered and weird girl. Lin informs the girl that he would let her go, but he tries to negotiate with her and asks her if she would collaborate with him in dealing with the carrion geckos. She asks him why she would want to be on his side, and he tells her that it is because they have a common enemy like the geckos, and their sixth Prince Venom. The girl tells Lin that if she had not been too busy at the time he killed Venom, she would have killed and defeated him by herself, but Lin tells her that Miss Ape had told him how she suffered great defeat from Venom. He also tells her that he heard how many of her feathers were plucked out, but she immediately tells him to keep quiet. Lin announces to her that he has a fruit that would make her feathers grow back, and he would not hesitate to give her unless she is on his side. The girl suddenly keeps quiet, and she begins to laugh as she tells Lin that he is smart, and he almost got her, but she knows why he is talking to her. She then tells him that he is talking to her, so that he can use the opportunity to buy time for Miss Ape to save the Wolverine. She tells Lin to open his eyes and look at her, as she had come to them well prepared. Meanwhile, just as Miss Ape is about to catch the Wolverine who is being passed by the birds to each other, two giant tapejara birds sways down, and one carries the Wolverine, and the two carries Miss Ape away. On seeing this, Lin immediately yells at the birds to let Miss Ape go, but he turns to the girl and asks her why he dared to capture Miss Ape, and he also asks if she is not aware of her own situation of being stuck in the tree, but the girl tells him that he thinks she would allow herself to be trampled on by him. She brings out her sharp feathers and uses it to cut the vines of the tree, but she also tells him, while cutting herself loose, that he is wrong as she has never taken him as a challenge before from the beginning. She also adds that her sharp feathers are valuable and she should not waste it on him, but if he still insists on standing in her way, she would have no choice but to show him what she is capable of. The girl begins to use her blade feathers to release blade winds at Lin, and he is surprised that the blade feathers are capable of doing that, but he immediately yells as he asks her what kind of magical power she is using her bladed feathers for. Lin immediately dodges the attacks of the wind blades that the girl used on him, as he tells himself that he did not know that the girl has a lot of tricks in her sleeves. The girl tells him that if only he has any idea of the value of the blade feathers she is holding, Lin would be thanking her for her generosity, and she immediately jumps up and uses the blade feathers to fell trees and hit them on Lin, but she tells him that the first punishment is for saving Miss Ape when she wanted to punish her for stealing her shape-shifting fruit, and the second punishment is for helping the Wolverine she wanted to hunt him to punish him for also stealing her shape-shifting fruit. She then uses the feathers to create a kind of magical power to fell a lot of trees, and she piles it up on Lin like firewood. Lin tells himself that if he does not get up and rescue himself very soon, she would make sure she kills him, and he has to do something very fast so that he can save Miss Ape and the Wolverine. The girl shows Lin the third blade feather and tells him that she was thinking of using it to punish him for stealing her shape-shifting fruit, but she tells him that as he is on his knees begging for her mercy, she would forgive him and let him go. The girl proudly announces to Lin that he has finally seen what she is capable of doing, and so he should not dare to look down on her ever again. She transforms back into a bird, and she yells at Lin not to get in her way again as she flies away. Lin looks up and notices that the tapejara birds he saw earlier were more than two, and he talks to himself saying that she does not seem like a kind person at all, and he wanted to talk to her about her joining him to defeat the Clarion geckos and their sixth prince. He also wonders why she let him go, as she could have ended his life at that spot, but he immediately brushes his thoughts aside, and he begins to think of how he would rescue Miss Ape and the Wolverine, as the birds were already flying so high and far along with the Doom Bird. He tells himself that he does not have the time to hesitate, and immediately his body begins to glow, and he stands up, causing all the trees that were on him to fall off him. He rises and tells himself that he cannot let the birds take his friends away, and immediately he uses his fury breath as an explosive bomb by aiming it at the Doom Bird. She says to herself that she would not be a fool to fall for his useless fury bomb, and she tells him that his fury bomb only explodes after the third collision, and all she has to do is to kick it away. Lin then tells her that she can only kick a ball away, but she cannot kick 3 balls away, and she replies to him that even if his fury bombs are up to 30 or more, she would kick everything and avoid defeat. She yells at Lin not to look down on her, as any of his bombs are not a challenge for her, and she also tells him to give up, as she is going to get rid of all his attacks. Lin begins to talk to himself about how stupid the bird is, as he is not targeting her, but the tapejara birds carrying his friend and the Wolverine, and even though he is not a master at PE, he is a master of geometry. The Doom Bird notices that the attacks are aiming at the tapejara birds and not her. Then she realizes that Lin has been using her all along. The Fury Bomb hits the tapejara birds, and Lin thanks the Doom Bird for helping him out, as he would not have been able to hit the bird as strong as he wanted to. Miss Ape sees that Lin has helped her a little bit, and she immediately knocks out the bird that is still holding her hand. Lin calls out on Miss Ape to ask if she is okay, and she tells him that she is fine, but she also tells him that she is sorry for not being able to save the Wolverine. Lin tells her not to worry about the Wolverine, as he saw him falling into a bush nearby, and he is sure that he would be okay, but he informs her that their major priority is taking down the Doom Bird, and they have to be very careful as her feathers release a strong wind blade. Lin tells Miss Ape that she should throw something at the Doombird's head, but as Miss Ape throws one of the injured Tapejara birds, Lin yells at her that she should not throw his food at her. Lin begins to think of what to do, and he immediately resorts to using his Fury Bomb, and this time, he tells her that he is going to attack her feathers, but the Doombird dodges the attack, and she yells at Lin that he is a filthy man by trying to burn her precious and powerful feathers. Lin and Miss Ape becomes frustrated as all of their attacks are futile against the Doombird, and suddenly, they see the Wolverine behind the Doombird, and before she could look back to check what they are surprised about, the Wolverine immediately dashes at her with his shining sword. The Doombird dodges the Wolverine's attack, and she yells at the Wolverine for being ugly, and she also threatens him not to use his evil human skills and techniques on her. She notices that the Wolverine did not even stop to listen to her, and immediately she feels something on her body, and as she checks her body she realizes that the Wolverine has used his sharp and shiny sword to cut off some parts of her feathers. She begins to cry as she asks him what he is trying to do, and she tells him how the feathers are so precious and important to her. Lin and Miss Ape begin to watch in amazement as the Wolverine cuts off the Doombird's feathers without getting attacked by her. The Doombird begins to cry, and the Wolverine tells her that as long as he can see through the flaws in her moves, he will be able to cut anything from her body. The Wolverine continues to cut through the Doombird's body, and as Lin watches, he begins to wonder how strong the feathers could generate a great wind blade, and yet they are easily cut into pieces by the Wolverine. He then concludes that the Doombird cannot do anything to the Wolverine, and also she is not capable of defeating him in any way whatsoever. After fighting with the Doombird, the Wolverine jumps down, and Lin commends him on how he has fought with the Doombird, and he also asks him if he can join himself and Miss Ape to defeat the Doombird, and after they can go on to defeat the carrion geckos and their 6 prince. The Wolverine tells him that his size is not capable of doing anything, and Lin immediately remembers that he had said those same words to the Wolverine when he told him that he had acquired the human skills and techniques. Lin then tries to convince the Wolverine that the human body actually works best on the Abyss Island full of monsters. Lin begins to beg the Wolverine to help him to defeat the Doombird, and if they are successful, they would go ahead with the duel in their human form as the Wolverine had suggested earlier, but only on the condition that he would wear protective gear. The Wolverine tells him that he does not like to fight with his bare hands because it is barbaric, and he would like to use his sword, and Lin tells him that it is okay. The Doombird, who has been watching and listening to them all along, begins to insult Lin for losing his honor by beating the ugly Wolverine. She suddenly feels a sharp pain in her feathers and tells Lin that he allowed the Wolverine to attack her and cut off her feathers after she spared his life. She begins to tell herself that if the Wolverine teams up with Lin and Mrs. Miss Ape, she and her Tapejara birds would not be a match for them. She immediately yells at them that they do not deserve her attention, and she would make sure she kills them next time she attacks them. Lin shuts her up by making fun of her, that she takes off like a rat due to her wounded feathers. Lin then tells himself that it is the right decision to make to team up with the Wolverine, and he is enjoying the way the Doombird is getting scared of him. Lin yells at the Doombird that she broke into his turf and interrupted his practice with the Wolverine, and she immediately asks him what he wants from her, and if he thinks she would apologize to him. He is dreaming as she would never tell him that she is sorry. Lin then asks her again if she would join them to defeat the carrion geckos and their 6 prince, or she should forget about her precious feathers, as he thinks that he can easily threaten her with her feathers, because he had noticed that she cherishes her feathers so much. The Doombird tells them that the way they went to capture the Gecko King is just like they are asking for the moon, and she also tells them that she can still fly well with her remaining feathers, if she wants to, but Lin tells her that she should try as it is not easy to fly in the jungle, and also the Wolverine is already waiting for her, and if she dares to fly away, he would use his sharp sword to cut part of her feathers. The Doombird disobeys Lin, and she tries to fly, and immediately she sees the Wolverine on the branch of a tree as he dashes towards her, and he immediately cuts part of her feathers and she falls to the ground. Miss Ape sees some Tapejara birds flying towards them, and she immediately uses a tree to hit them, while the Doombird begins to run on her feet, as she thinks that she has to get rid of the Wolverine, and after that she would fly, and when she is in the sky, they would not be able to get to her. Lin suddenly sees that she is escaping, and she is running like an ostrich, and immediately he runs after her, yelling at her that she cannot outrun him with her weak legs. He quickly runs past her, and he stops in front of her, and he tells her that they are not as weak as she thinks they are, and he also politely asks her again if she would join them in defeating the Gecko King. The Doombird immediately tries to attack Lin, and the Wolverine immediately cuts part of her feathers again, and she falls to the ground crying that they have injured her a lot and they have stripped her of her beautiful and precious feathers. She tells them that each of her feathers represents the cores of each monster on the island. Lin then tells her that she wants to capture Miss Ape and the Wolverine so that she can take their cores as well, but they would not let her harm them as she is not their friend but enemy. Lin tells the Doombird that she is a big threat to them, and they would not spare her. The Doombird also tells them that as they have damaged her feathers, they would have to pay for it with their lives. The Doombird tells them that the Abyss Island is in danger, and to save it they need great powers, and that is why the monsters on the island trusted her with their lives and energy. Then she uses it to form her precious feathers. She tells them that instead of helping her they ruined her feathers and wasted the effort of the monsters. She also asks them if they know how angry the monsters are. Then she immediately begins to use her bottom feathers to create the blade wind, and Lin immediately says that she is using all her tail feathers to create the blade wind. Lin then tells himself that she is trying all her best to defeat them, but the Doombird continues to create the wind. Lin notices that the wind is so strong, and it wants to blow him away, and Miss Ape quickly calls out to Lin that he should come and hide in the pit that she is in. Lin becomes furious, and he begins to yell that the Doombird is cheating as his attack looks like a natural disaster. He also asks if Miss Ape is alright, and she tells him that she is okay. Lin begins to notice that the blade wind is getting weaker, and he begins to think if she has exhausted all her feathers. Lin peeps and sees that the Doombird's attention is on the Wolverine, and he begins to wonder if himself and Miss Ape are no more big of a threat to the Doombird than the Wolverine. He also thinks that she is attacking the Wolverine as a result of the love she has for him, and he also thinks that the Wolverine would not be able to use his skills to attack the Doombird. In the hurricane, she used her tail feathers to build. Suddenly, Lin sees another set of strange birds, and he immediately yells at the Doombird asking why the Doombird is calling for help. Immediately, the new set of birds begin to go towards where Lin and Miss Ape are hiding, and Lin begins to yell that they should run for their lives, but Miss Ape tells him that the birds are just a bunch of chickens, and she would just have to get them roasted. Lin asks Miss Ape if she sees their teeth that are sharper than the blades of the Wolverine, and those teeth would tear them into pieces in just a second. The birds begin to chase them, and suddenly Lin halts, and soon the birds surround him and Miss Ape. He tells Miss Ape to get out of the place and try to save the Wolverine as they cannot leave him alone and run away. He also tells Miss Ape that he would take care of the strange birds, and he helps Miss Ape to chase the birds away with his fury breath. But he notices that the breath does not have any effect on them, but instead the fury breath makes them move away from him, and this gives Miss Ape an opportunity to escape. In the process of chasing the birds, one of the birds bites Lin on his arm, and he notices that they are fast with their attacks, and he is not able to dodge their attacks. Then Lin tells the birds that he can also bite them, and immediately as he bites them, his evolution points begins to increase and his wounds begin to heal. Lin begins to lament that their attacks are very painful, and if he does not quickly attack them, they would kill him. He also begins to bite the strange birds, and he tells them that he is going to devour them. If you like this recap, do let me know in the comments, and obviously leave your likes too. Do not forget to share with your friends and subscribe. Above all, activate your notification bell so you don't miss the next recap when it drops. Until next time, do take care and stay safe.